Hello guys! Welcome back to Not Just Mecha. It's Marco here, and today we speed paint with crazy efficiency a full set of terrains. Okay, let's be honest here. It's not that I really hate painting scenic elements, but I prefer for sure to work on figures. There's something in a model with a face and an epic power pose that inspires and speaks to me more than any static piece of terrain. I imagine it like being a portrait painter versus a landscape artist. You don't really have to choose between the two, and the line is often blurred. But judging from art history, most of the time you have a natural preference for one subject or the other. Even walking in a museum, I tend to glance over landscapes and give priority to portraits. But still, being also a gamer, and a gamer that plays mostly for the visual experience of the battles, and the cinematic translation that happens in your brain during and after a match, I want the environment of my games to be as cool as the models. So, to keep my interest, motivation and inspiration to high levels, and of course get a great result, my workflows on terrains tend to be extremely quick and dirty, always optimized for efficiency and based on the power of spray cans and oil paint. Building doesn't come up often on the channel, so I'll take the opportunity to give you some basic advice on the topic. Always test fit the parts before adding glue. Recent kits, especially from Games Workshop, often have complex, strange cuts and shapes, made to hide or minimize the visual impact of the seam lines, and the points of contact are not always obvious. So save yourself some trouble, check the fit first, and then move to gluing. And if you are building plastic, use plastic cement, not super glue. These types of glue chemically melt the plastic, creating a perfect physical bond between parts that become one single solid block. Apply a good amount of glue on both sides of the joint. Let it melt the surface for a few seconds, then squeeze them together for an indestructible connection, perfect to handle the physical stress to which gaming models and terrains are exposed. And because of these same principles, you can use it also as a putty to fill bigger gaps with that melted material and make the seams completely disappear. Here I'm filling a big junction, while also adding extra organic textures to the big skull, so that the line will fuse into the flow of the sculpt, simply brushing glue on top, as I would do with Milliput or other quick-drying putties. And this filling action becomes even better if you enrich your glue with a few pieces of sprue that increase mass and density of the compound. Let's move outside on this perfect Saturday morning for some serious spray can action. The weather is beautiful. The air is dry, coming from a short streak of sunny days. The temperature is in the ideal range for spraying, and it will remain quite stable during the day. And as a plus, all my neighbors are on vacation, so I can paint on the balcony without complaints. Perfection. Since I'm a real pro, I'm going to use my barbecue setup, well covered in layers of wrapping paper. And of course, gloves and my big professional respirator, because you never want to breathe the fumes of atomized solvent-based paint. And of course, here is my collection of caps that I use as brushes of different shapes and sizes to obtain different effects, strokes and behaviors from my cans. If you want to explore this topic more in depth, I have a full video up here precisely about the basics of the advanced use of rattle cans, with a ton of tips coming from years of modeling, and let's call it artistic vandalism. You'll never catch me. Ready to cook. Paint. I start the work with a layer of plastic primer. These cans are made for graffiti and mural art, so the primer comes with a medium-size flat jet cap that behaves almost like a paint roller, giving you a nice, flat, regular cover on a big line of about 10 centimeters. Perfect if you need to prime a large, flat, 2D surface. But since painting a 3D object, I need a more diffused, three-dimensional reach without a real focal point. I switch to a simple fat cap and its large spray cone. Honest disclaimer. This is probably the first time I've ever used a proper plastic primer. This can was a gift from the shop. The kind of gift you get when you spend too much, and they feel sorry for you because of the angry look of your wife in the back. In my experience, these kind of cans have all the adhesion power they need without a preparatory layer, and I didn't feel any real difference in the advanced stages of the process. But hey, it was free! Then I moved to my chromatic foundational layer. A simple, uniform coat of dark brown to set from the beginning the natural feel of the scheme. Working on projects of this size, you don't really have to wait too long between a layer and the next one. By the time you finish painting the last piece, the first one is dry to the touch, and that's all you need to make it suitable for the next coat. I'm a bit heavy-handed with this application, part because I want it solid and uniform, part because I want to get the job done quickly, and part because I want a bit of this subtle texture that I really like because it breaks the smoothness of plastic and gets a more natural, organic, tactile feel on bark and old bones. If you are veterans of the channel, you'll quickly notice how, from this point, my spray can work becomes really similar to my airbrushing flow. And that's because the two tools have a lot in common, and I've learned to do this stuff before airbrushing. And then I translated and expanded these ideas to the more controlled behavior of the airbrush. First, I break the uniformity of the brown base with random patches of green paint to make my lower shadows more interesting and dynamic, still keeping the same naturalistic sensations. And to really optimize the work, these are also the final tones of the platforms of bamboo sticks that will create a nice value contrast with the lighter colors I'll set all around them, still maintaining a coherent harmony coming from the common foundations. Then I start building up lighter values and tones with a saturated violet. I want this tone only on the living trees, made of masses of contorted muscles, so I switch to a level 2 fine skinny cap. A cap able to focus the spray in a relatively precise diameter of 2-3 cm, so great to focus and contain a bit the inevitable overspray. I close the progression using a classic skin tone on a zenithal angle to push on the idea that these trees are more flesh than vegetation. Painting with every possible medium is never a straight linear path, especially working with tools intrinsically not super precise. So I go back with brown and green to fix the light overspray here and there, and later I'll do the same back and forth with all the other tones. This also adds extra random complexity to the layering of tones. That's always a good thing when you try rendering nature or organic materials. And I spray the bones with a cold bluish grey to establish a good amount of contrast, both internal against the brown deeper layers and external with the warm tones of the flesh trees. The simpler shapes of the small scenic elements are much easier to define with a single general pass, with a few super straightforward zenithal coats. I still try to introduce some more precise modulations here and there, but oils will do most of the work on these smaller bits. And after all the overlapped layers, I leave the tray for a good couple of hours under this lovely warm sun. Back to the painting table, you can better see how blends and transitions made with spray cans, especially with this kind of strong value jumps, are made more by changes of density in the micro pattern of dots created by the mist of opaque paint than the semi-transparent build-up you get from an airbrush. But if needed, you can always make them smoother, increasing values and tones in a more gentle and progressive way. In this particular case, mostly because of the nature of the subject, I really like this rougher rendering. Spray cans did a great job establishing all this stuff in a few steps, but of course, the edges on the smaller details are not very precise, so I quickly fixed them with the airbrush. A light skin tone for the trees, a natural green for the platforms, and a simple grey for the bones. I totally do not care about a precise color matching. Every difference adds random depth and complexity to the general picture, making the result much more interesting than the sum of its simple parts. And here is my secret weapon to bring everything together in a more natural flowing look. A zenithal light coat of white ink. I need extremely high values in the lights to balance the darkening effect of the heavy washes, so this layer sets my highlights and at the same time hides the last visible crimes around the edges of the main colors. I don't use a spray can for this, because white pigments are always a bit chalky, and when sprayed in the light mist I need here, their solid chalkiness becomes really extreme. Plus, at this point, I don't want any white on the brown-green platforms. I give everything a good night of rest, and in the morning I move to oil paints. I use this step 80% to create definition, and 20% to add extra random new tones. So I choose darker versions of my original sprayed colors that will easily build up opacity and darkness when their pigments accumulate in the recesses, but with a tested and proved low staining power, so they will remain subtle and transparent on the raised parts, especially after the cleaning stage. Because of the quick turnover and the variety of projects that I work on, and the fact that I don't often work on terrains, I tend to create my mixes on the spot. But you can totally pre-mix large batches of oil filters and washes and store them indefinitely in well-sealed jars. They are super cheap and versatile, and they give you a ton of useful extra working time to handle the extremely large surfaces of terrains. This stage is just pure, simple, messy fun. The only thing I do is slapping random tones everywhere. Nothing more complicated than that. Again, working on a figure, I'm always ready and happy to overthink every single micro brushstroke, especially if it's material for a competition. But in this case, I just want to swing the brush, while rewatching Star Trek episodes with my peripheral vision.
Captain's log, stardate 42523.7.
You never saw me, and you'll probably never see me working again in this savage way. Remember all my past careful cleanings with delicate makeup sponges and tiny Q-tips? Well, here I just use a rag dumped in white spirit. Yup, just a soft rag carelessly brushed over the raised details. Terrains always have big, sharp and deep shapes, so I don't need fine movements or a lot of control. The only thing that I try to keep a bit coherent is the more or less zenithal motion of the rag to clean the superficial paint from the upper parts, enhancing the illusion of light set by the zenithal sprays, and at the same time pushing the excess of dark paint into lower areas. The only thing that I want to do at this point is to turn the tips of the tree branches / claws into a nasty, evil-looking black. I'll be super honest with you. In my plan, I should have done this step before oils. But as mentioned, I was already watching TNG and I got distracted. And here is the final result. One of my quickest and most carefree projects that I hope will be useful to ease a bit the work of all the amazing game club and tournament organizers out there. And now I have to magnetize all this stuff to store it on my magnetic gaming table. Check it out here. If you like this video, give it a like and subscribe. Remember that you can ask me anything down below with a comment, and you can follow my projects during the week using one of my socials. And if you want to support my work, check my Patreon page and join the community, or maybe ask for a commission. See you next week, guys!